It's KG.codes here, and today I want to talk about when to code from scratch versus when to use some existing frameworks or components and whatever you're trying to code or develop. I get this question a lot, and kind of just how to split. You want to, sometimes when you're first starting off, you want to code everything from scratch, or you want to, try to learn. But in reality, in a lot of jobs and a lot of the applications you'll write, everything's abstracted, and there's some level of reuse that's happening at all times. So trying to find that balance between what you need to write from scratch and what you don't is an important thing to know. So to start, when do you code something from scratch? So in my opinion, a general rule of thumb is that you code from scratch the unique value proposition of your app, website, or service. So the unique thing that doesn't exist anywhere else, the unique logic and features in your application. That's what you need to be coding from scratch. Other things like, push notification service or some sort of thing that, concatenates strings or breaks up strings, things that have been reused in multiple apps 1,000 times over. Services like Facebook login, use the Facebook SDK. Why write that from scratch? Certain things that don't actually move the needle on making your app successful in its unique way are things that you probably don't need to write from scratch. But the things that don't exist anywhere else, that's where you're making your money on the app, quote unquote, is those unique things that don't exist somewhere else. So that's what you should invest your time in trying to code, instead of investing a lot of time in trying to code something that has been coded 1,000 times by 1 million developers on these huge teams from these huge companies. It also could be when you're trying to integrate different services in a unique way, and you need to have some unique code to be able to integrate these services. So let's say you using like some sort of machine learning to detect text on a credit card, and you might need to get that to send push notifications every time you detect a certain piece of text. Well, you're going to use an existing push notification service, and then you use an existing machine learning based text recognizer, but you need to put these together to do it in a special way. So that code in between is the code you should probably code from scratch, or definitely code from scratch. But the codes on the side, the things that exist already, you should just reuse those. You shouldn't, it's no, unless there's a really strong reason to do so, there's no reason to do that and waste a lot of time, waste weeks possibly doing that. Other times you might want to code from scratch is when you're trying to learn, and when the project itself doesn't warrant the overhead of pulling in some external pre-built thing. So like there's a small app, small service, something that's, that adding this dependency in, because everything you add in is a dependency. And I do, think about that, but I think, some things are small enough where it doesn't even warrant you bringing something in. Like the thing you're bringing in is bigger than the whole app that you're doing. So it's, in that case, it may not be worth having this overhead and this new amount of memory, or, increasing the size of your app when it's not necessarily, necessary. So on the other end, when should you use some existing framework or component or service that's already out there? A lot of times, if there's something you already done, some component that you made use in an old project, it's a great thing to reuse in your new project. And other times, if something you're building lends itself to a certain design pattern or framework, then you probably should use the framework. Like if something lends itself to using a singleton pattern, and there's some framework that is like based on this pattern, then maybe you should use this framework to save time and not build from scratch every minute detail of what this app needs to do, but use a framework that kind of does a lot of like the dirty low level work for you. You should also reuse a service when the thing you need to implement, or the feature you need to implement, has been well tested, well developed. It's a solved problem years ago, and every app has it. It's not anything brand new, but it's just something you need in your app. It's a necessary kind of foundation you need, like push notifications in an app or in a website. It may be, linked to login with Facebook, or it might be, I don't know, a chat box that, your site might need a chat box for customer support, but is that the main purpose of the site? Is that how it makes its money? If it's not, and if there's nothing unique about a chat box, then maybe you should use a third-party chat box service and integrate that into your app and focus your time on building whatever is unique about your website that's gonna, make it stand out from the rest. I think all in all, the basic rule should be don't reinvent the wheel. That's just the basic saying. It sounds cliche, but in programming and development, it stands just as true. Just don't reinvent the wheel. There's problems that have been solved by dev teams for years that you could go off and spend months, if not years, working on something to only get back to the same level they did, if you ever do. And for what? You're not gonna, if they've already done it 3 times over, then you doing it for an app that doesn't really rely on it is just a waste of time. And it's not, not calling it a waste of time because maybe you're learning or maybe you're teaching. Then I think in those cases you should. You can build something from scratch to learn the basics of things. That makes perfect sense. So these are my general thoughts on it, but there are always exceptions to the rule. So let me know, comment or whatever. Let me know what you think about this and kind of what, ideas you have and suggestions you have for when to code from scratch and when not to code from scratch. Look forward to hearing the discussion and what you guys think. Thanks for watching the video.